Not totally inflexible on anything, but I feel when it comes to the borders, we have to have strong borders, absolutely.
Well, let's talk about your tax return. Under new pressure from the Clinton campaign, Secretary Clinton talking about that the last couple of days. I just have a bottom line question for you. Yes or no, do you believe voters have a right to see your tax returns before they make a final decision?
I don't think they do, but I do say this. I will really gladly give them. They're not going to learn anything, but it's under routine audit. When the audit ends, them. That should be before the election. I hope it's before the election. But when the audit ends, I've had even journalists say that, no, nobody should give until audits are over. I've had journalists say that. So I think there's no I sort of have to laugh when Clinton says it. Mrs. Clinton said that I should give my tax returns. What about all the missing emails that she's got? When is she going to give the missing emails, or her Goldman Sachs speeches? When is she going to give that? Very, very great hypocrite. But as far as I'm concerned, I want to give it as soon as possible. As soon as the audit ends, I'll give it. I've been under audit. Every year they audit me. I have wealthy friends that never get audited. I get audited every single year.
But as you know, Mr. Trump, the audit is no excuse. The IRS has made it very clear that an audit is not a bar to public release. It is entirely your choice. President Nixon, Richard Nixon, released his tax returns even though he was under audit. And when you were seeking a casino license in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, you released the returns to the state officials even though you were under audit.
I am under audit now, and as soon as the audit ends, I'll release my returns. It's a very simple thing.
Sir,
if you look at many others feel the same way. And almost every lawyer will tell you the same thing. When you're under audit, you finish the audit before you release. I have no problem. And it should be, and I hope it's before the election.
But, sir, if you were willing to release...
And by the way, people are going to learn nothing. You know, I put in financials, 100 pages worth of financials that show that I built a company that's worth more than $10 billion. It shows cash, it shows cash flows, it shows everything. You learn very little from tax returns, but nevertheless, when the audit is complete, I will release. I have no problem with it.
A couple of follow-ups to that, though. If you were willing to release your tax returns to get a casino license, why shouldn't voters see them before they make you commander-in-chief?
Well, because at the time it didn't make any difference to me. Now it does. If you take a look at the picture that we sent you, where the tax returns are probably 10 feet high when you stack them on top, and linked and very complex. I built a massive business. Sure that everything's perfect. It's a routine audit. I want to get through the audit first, and that's what I'll do. There have been many presidents that have not shown their tax returns.
Actually, every single nominee since 1976 has released their tax
returns. Before 1976, people didn't do it. I mean, it used to be a secret thing. I don't want it to be secret, but I do want the audit to get finished.
Before that, Richard Nixon released his returns, as I said, even though they were under oath. But to get to your point, on the one hand, you show that stack of tax returns. On the other hand, you say that people can't learn anything from them. They can actually learn quite a lot. They can learn your sources of income. They can learn whether you have any foreign sources of income or whether you have any Swiss bank accounts or other offshore accounts. Do you?
I'll tell you right now, I do not. And I don't have Swiss bank accounts. I don't have offshore. I really have a very, very clean company. And believe me, if I didn't, it would have been reported by 200 groups, because there's nobody that has more reporting or more scrutiny than I have. I've given my financials. They're extraordinary, and we would have read if they weren't. But believe me, when I released my financials, George, and we sent them down to federal elections, there was a feeding frenzy by the media, and they reported, wow, that is a great company. And I have built a great, great company. And by the way, when you look at numbers, when you look at incomes, when you look at all of the things, or most of the things that you talked about, that's reported on the financials.
It's not reported on the financials. What the financials don't show also is your tax rate. They don't show whether you paid a low tax rate or no tax rate.
I find very hard to pay as little tax as possible, and I've said that for the last 2 years. I fight very hard because this country wastes our money. They take our tax money and they throw it down the drain. They spend $4 trillion in the Middle East, and we can't fix a road or a bridge. And I fight very hard. I consider it an expense because, frankly, our country doesn't know what they're doing with our money or our tax money, and that's part of the problem. So I fight very hard to pay as little tax as possible.
What is your tax rate?
It's none of your business. You'll see it when I release. But to pay as little tax as possible.
You know, we've talked about this several times over the last several years. I first asked you about this in 2011, and you said you would release your tax returns then. You were thinking of running for president when President Obama releases his birth certificate. He did. Then you said you would release your tax returns when Secretary Clinton released her email. She has turned over all the emails in her possession.
She didn't turn over all. There's plenty missing. I read yesterday where there are a lot of emails missing. I know she's a good friend of yours, and I know you worked for him and you didn't reveal it. But, you know, she did not turn over her emails. There are a lot of emails missing.
There were emails from her staffers missing. She turned over the emails she has.
There are emails missing all over the place. The whole thing is a scam. There are emails missing all over the place.
But you have also said then that you were just going through all of the returns and you released them as soon as you went through them. Now you're throwing up the audit.
I never said that at all. I said to you that I will release them upon the completion of the audit like anybody else. I was interviewed last night or the other night by Greta Van Susteren, who's a lawyer. She said, I happen to agree with you. Until the audit is complete, you shouldn't release them.
Mr. Trump, thanks very much for your time this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right, George, we're going to move on now to George Zimmerman and his plan to sell